I came home to find my sister's family had moved into my house, with all their furniture and kids' toys everywhere. After 7 years of saving every penny, living in a studio apartment, skipping vacations, I finally bought my dream home. I thought my family would be proud of me, but when I confronted my parents about this invasion, their response made my blood boil. "You're being selfish, Sarah." They had orchestrated this behind my back, using my spare key to move Jessica's entire family in. So I did something that shocked them to their core. I cut them off completely. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. 7 years ago, I was 28, working 2 jobs and living in a cramped studio apartment in downtown Phoenix. The place was barely 400 square feet, with a Murphy bed that took up half the room when it was down. My kitchen was literally a hot plate and a mini fridge. But I had a dream. I wanted to own my own home. While my friends were going out for drinks every weekend, posting vacation photos from Cabo and Miami, I was meal prepping chicken and rice for the 5th night in a row. While they were buying designer handbags and the latest iPhone every year, I was driving a 2008 Honda Civic with 200,000 miles and a passenger door that only opened from the inside. Every single month, I put away 40% of my income. 40%. That meant living on basically nothing, but I kept my eyes on the prize. I worked my day job at a marketing firm, then rushed home to change into my uniform for my evening job at a local restaurant, 6 days a week, every week, for 7 years. My family thought I was crazy. "You're missing out on your 20s, my mom Linda would say during our Sunday phone calls. "Jessica's out there living her life, traveling with Mark, having experiences. You're going to regret this when you're older." But I knew what I wanted. I wanted something that was mine. Something stable. Something nobody could take away from me. When I finally had enough for a down payment, I spent months house hunting. I must have seen 40 properties before I found her, a beautiful 3-bedroom ranch in a quiet neighborhood in Scottsdale. The moment I walked through that front door, I knew this was it. The living room had these huge windows that let in gorgeous, natural light. The kitchen had granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. There was even a small backyard with a mature orange tree. The day I got the keys was the happiest day of my life. I literally cried sitting in my car in the driveway, just staring at my house. My house! After 7 years of sacrifice, I'd done it. I called my parents immediately. "Mom, Dad, I got it. I'm officially a homeowner." The pride in their voices was everything I'd worked for. "Oh, honey, we're so proud of you," my mom said, and I could hear her getting emotional. "You've worked so hard for this." My dad got on the phone. "Sarah, this is incredible. You should be so proud of yourself. Not many people your age can say they own their own home." Even my sister Jessica seemed genuinely happy for me when I FaceTimed her that evening. She was at her apartment with Mark and their 2 kids, Emma, who was 6, and little Jake, who'd just turned 4. "Sarah, oh my God, this is amazing," she squealed when I gave her a virtual tour. "Look at all this space. This is like 3 times the size of our place." "Well, I mean, it's 3 bedrooms," I laughed, panning my phone around the living room. "I figure I can use one as an office, maybe turn one into a guest room for when you guys visit." "We'll definitely have to come stay sometime," Jessica said, and Mark nodded in the background. Everything felt perfect. I was finally an adult, finally independent, finally living the life I'd worked so hard to build. The first few months were bliss. I slowly furnished the place, buying quality pieces that would last. I planted flowers in the front yard. I hosted my first dinner party and felt so proud showing off my beautiful home to my friends. But then, gradually, things started to shift. It began with innocent questions during family phone calls. "How's the house, sweetie?" my mom would ask. "Are you enjoying all that space?" "Yeah, it's great," I'd say. "I love having room to spread out." "It must feel a little empty sometimes, though, right? Just you rattling around in all those rooms?" I brushed off comments like that at first. Of course it felt a little big sometimes. I'd gone from 400 square feet to 1,800 square feet. But it was my space, and I loved every inch of it. Then my parents started asking about the spare key. "You should really give us a spare key, honey," my dad said during one of their visits. Just for emergencies, you know. What if something happens and we need to get in? It made sense, so I had a copy made. Just for emergencies, I emphasized when I handed it to them. Of course, just for emergencies, my mom agreed, but something about the way she said it felt off, like she was already planning something. Around month 4, the comments about my sister started getting more frequent. Jessica's really struggling financially, my mom mentioned during one of our weekly calls. Mark's hours got cut at work, and you know how expensive childcare is. That's rough, I said sympathetically. Are they going to be okay? Oh, they'll figure it out. They always do. I just worry about those kids, you know? Emma's getting so big, and they're all crammed into that tiny 2-bedroom apartment. I felt bad for Jessica. I really did. But I'd worked hard for my financial stability. I'd made sacrifices she hadn't been willing to make. While I was eating ramen noodles and working 2 jobs, Jessica and Mark were taking weekend trips and buying new cars. Their financial struggles weren't really my problem, but the guilt trips kept coming. In our family, we help each other, my dad would say. When you were struggling to save for the house, who helped you out with groceries sometimes? It was true. My parents had helped me here and there over the years. A bag of groceries when money was tight, gas money when my car broke down. But I'd always paid them back, and it had never been substantial help. I know, Dad, and I appreciate everything you guys have done for me. If Jessica needs help, I'm happy to babysit the kids sometimes, or... It's just that you have all this space, my mom interrupted. 3 bedrooms for 1 person. It seems wasteful. There it was. The word that would haunt me for months. Wasteful. As if working my butt off for 7 years to afford something nice was somehow morally wrong. The pressure intensified over the following weeks. Could Jessica maybe store some things in your garage? My mom asked during one visit. Just temporarily while they figure out their housing situation? Their housing situation? I asked. What's wrong with their apartment? Oh, didn't I mention? They might have to move. The rent's going up and they just can't afford it anymore. This was the first I was hearing about Jessica potentially losing her apartment. When did this happen? It's been building for a while, my dad said vaguely. You know how it is with rent these days. Everything's so expensive. Against my better judgment, I agreed to let Jessica store some boxes in my garage. Just temporarily, I stressed. And just a few boxes. Of course, honey. Just until they get back on their feet. 2 days later, a pickup truck pulled into my driveway. I watched from my window as Mark and Jessica unloaded not a few boxes, but what looked like half their apartment. Furniture, bags of clothes, toys, kitchen appliances. It was way more than we'd agreed on. I went outside to confront them. Jess, this is a lot more than just some boxes. I know, I'm sorry, she said, looking genuinely apologetic. Everything happened so fast. The landlord gave us notice, and we had to start moving stuff out earlier than expected. This is just the stuff we can't fit in our new place. Your new place? I thought you guys were struggling to find somewhere affordable. Jessica and Mark exchanged a look. We found a temporary solution, Mark said. It's just really small, so we can't fit all our stuff. Something felt off about their story, but I didn't want to be the bad guy. They were family, and they clearly needed help, so I let them fill up my garage with their belongings. That night, my mom called. Thank you so much for helping Jessica, she gushed. You're such a good sister. I knew we could count on you. The praise felt good, but it also felt manipulative, like I was being rewarded for compliance rather than genuinely appreciated. Over the next week, the requests escalated. Could Jessica stay in your guest room for just a couple nights? My mom asked. Their temporary place has a bedbug situation and she doesn't want to expose the kids. Bedbugs? I said. Where exactly are they staying? With Mark's brother, Jessica said when she showed up at my door that evening with an overnight bag. But his place is kind of sketchy, and we found some bugs in the mattress. It seemed reasonable enough. A couple nights wouldn't hurt anyone, except a couple nights turned into a week. Then Jessica mentioned that maybe the kids could stay too, just until they sorted out the bedbug situation. They could sleep in the living room, she suggested. They love camping out anyway. I was starting to feel invaded. But every time I brought up concerns, I was met with guilt. They're family, my mom would remind me. And you have so much space. The second week, Mark started coming around more often. First, just to visit Jessica and the kids, then to help out around the house as a way to earn his keep. Before I knew it, he was basically living there too. I tried to set boundaries. I think it's time you guys found a more permanent solution, I told Jessica one morning over coffee. This was supposed to be temporary. I know, and I'm looking, she said, but everything's so expensive, and we need time to save up for deposits and everything. You know how it is. But I didn't know how it was. I'd never put myself in a position where I relied on other people's charity to house my family. I'd lived in that tiny studio apartment for years rather than impose on anyone else. That weekend, I came home from running errands to find a moving truck in my driveway. My heart sank as I watched Mark and a couple guys I didn't recognize carrying furniture into my house. "What's going on?" I asked Jessica, who was directing them from my front porch like she owned the place. "Oh, we had to get the rest of our stuff out of storage," she said casually. "The storage unit was costing us $200 a month, which we obviously can't afford right now." "And you're bringing it here?" "Just temporarily," she said, using that word I was beginning to hate. "Until we find our own place." I watched helplessly as they carried in a sectional sofa, a dining room table, a kid's bunk bed, and boxes upon boxes of belongings. My beautiful, carefully curated living space was disappearing under the chaos of someone else's life. When I called my parents that evening, furious and overwhelmed, their response was not what I expected. "Sarah, honey, what did you expect Jessica to do?" my mom said. "Put her children on the street?" "I expected her to figure out her own housing situation instead of taking over mine." "You're being dramatic," my dad chimed in. "It's not like she's taking over. You still live there too." But it didn't feel like I lived there anymore. It felt like I was a guest in my own home, tiptoeing around someone else's family, trying not to disturb their routine in my space. The breaking point came 3 weeks later when I arrived home from work to find that the lock on my front door wasn't working. My key wouldn't turn, no matter how I jiggled it. I rang the doorbell, and 6-year-old Emma answered. "Hi, Aunt Sarah," she said cheerfully. "Hi, sweetheart. Is your mom here? My key isn't working." "Mommy," Emma called over her shoulder. "Aunt Sarah's here." Jessica appeared a moment later, looking strangely guilty. "Oh, hey, Sarah. We had to change the locks." "You had to change the locks? On my house?" "Well, the old lock was getting sticky, and Mark thought it might be a security issue, so he just went ahead and fixed it." I stared at her in disbelief. "Jessica, this is my house. You can't just change the locks without asking me." I know. I should have asked first. I'm sorry. Here, let me get you the new key." But as she handed me the key, something inside me snapped. This wasn't about a sticky lock. This was about control. This was about my own family systematically taking over my life, my space, my home, and making me feel guilty for objecting to it. That night, I lay in my bed, the only space in the house that still felt like mine, and realized that I'd been manipulated. My 7 years of sacrifice, my dream of home ownership, my pride in my achievement, it had all been turned against me. I was being made to feel selfish for wanting to enjoy what I'd worked so hard for. The next morning, I decided to call my parents and have a serious conversation about boundaries and timelines. I needed Jessica's family to move out, and I needed my parents to support that decision. "Mom, I need to talk to you about Jessica's situation," I began when she answered the phone. "What about it, honey?" "It's been almost a month now, and they're not showing any signs of looking for their own place. This was supposed to be temporary." There was a long pause. "Sarah, I'm surprised at you. I really am." "Surprised at me? For what?" "For being so selfish. Jessica is your sister. She has children. And you're sitting there in that big house upset that you have to share it with family who need help." "Mom, I'm not upset about helping. I'm upset that this has turned into a permanent arrangement that I never agreed to." "You know what your problem is, Sarah? You've always been selfish. Even as a kid, you never wanted to share your toys, and now you don't want to share your house." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Selfish? I'd been anything but selfish. I'd shared my garage, my guest room, my living space, my kitchen, my peace of mind. I'd had my locks changed without permission and hadn't even thrown a fit about it. I worked for 7 years to buy this house, Mom. 7 years. While Jessica was living her life, I was saving every penny. And now you have a house. My dad's voice came on the line. Apparently, he'd been listening on the extension. A house that's too big for one person. Jessica has kids, Sarah, kids who need stability. Then Jessica should have thought about that before she made financial decisions that put her family at risk. You're being cruel, my mom said, her voice cold. Family helps family, but apparently that doesn't apply to you. The conversation ended with them hanging up on me. I sat there in my kitchen, Jessica's kids' artwork now covering my refrigerator, Jessica's coffee maker taking up space on my counter, and felt more alone than I had in years. That evening, things got worse. Jessica and Mark called a family meeting in my living room. They sat me down like I was the child and they were the parents. Sarah, we need to talk, Jessica began. Mark and I have been discussing our situation, and we think it's time to make this arrangement more official. Official? We want to contribute to the household, Mark said. Pay our share of utilities, groceries, that kind of thing. Make this a real partnership. I felt my stomach drop. What kind of partnership? Well, we're thinking we could split the mortgage payment, Jessica said. You pay half, we pay half. That way you're not carrying the whole burden, and we can invest in building equity too. I almost laughed at the audacity. You want to pay half my mortgage and get equity in my house? It makes sense, doesn't it? We're living here, we're contributing to the household. It's only fair that we have some stake in the property. Jessica, I've been paying this mortgage for months. I saved for 7 years for the down payment. This house is mine. But we're family, Mark said, and family shares. There was that word again. Family. It was being weaponized against me, used to justify every boundary violation, every manipulation, every theft of my autonomy. I need you guys to start looking for your own place, I said as calmly as I could manage. Seriously, this arrangement isn't working for me anymore. Jessica's face hardened. Where are we supposed to go, Sarah? We don't have money for deposits and moving expenses. We're trying to get back on our feet. That's not my responsibility. Not your responsibility? Mark stood up, his voice rising. She's your sister. And this is my house. Your house that's sitting here mostly empty while your family struggles. The argument escalated from there. Voices were raised, accusations were thrown, and finally Jessica started crying. I can't believe you're doing this to us, she sobbed. To your own niece and nephew. But I held firm. I want you out by the end of the month. The next day, my phone rang nonstop. My parents, my aunts and uncles, even my grandmother, they'd all been mobilized to guilt me into changing my mind. Sarah, honey, what's this I hear about you kicking Jessica and the babies out? My grandmother said when I finally answered one of her calls. I'm not kicking anyone out, Grandma. I'm asking them to find their own place after they've been staying here for over a month. But where will they go? That's for them to figure out. I never thought I'd see the day when someone in our family would be so heartless. Heartless, selfish, cruel. The character assassination was swift and brutal. Within 24 hours, I'd gone from being the successful, hard-working daughter to being the villain of the family story. But the worst was yet to come, because what I didn't know was that while I was having these phone arguments and feeling guilty about my selfishness, my parents were orchestrating something that would push me past my breaking point entirely. The phone calls continued for 3 days straight. I stopped answering after the 5th relative told me I was being unreasonable and selfish. By Thursday evening, I was emotionally drained and questioning everything. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe family really should come first, even when it meant sacrificing everything I'd worked for. That's when I decided to take a drive to clear my head. I needed to get out of the house, my house that no longer felt like mine, and think things through rationally. As I pulled out of my driveway, I noticed my parents' car turning onto my street. Weird timing, but I didn't think much of it. I drove around for about 2 hours, eventually stopping at a coffee shop across town. I sat there with my laptop trying to work on some projects, trying to feel normal again. Around 9 p.m., I decided to head home and have one more conversation with Jessica about realistic timelines for moving out. But when I pulled into my driveway, I immediately knew something was wrong. There were lights on in rooms that should have been dark. The garage door was open, and I could see it was completely full of furniture and boxes, way more than had been there when I left. My key didn't work in the front door. I stood there for a full minute, jiggling the key, thinking maybe I was doing something wrong. But no, the lock had been changed again, and this time no one had bothered to tell me. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I could hear voices inside, the TV playing, normal family sounds, but no one came to the door. I rang again, nothing. Finally, I started knocking. "Jessica, I know you're in there. My key doesn't work." After several minutes, Mark came to the door. He opened it just a crack, like I was some stranger he didn't trust. "Hey, Sarah," he said, not moving to let me in. "My key doesn't work?" I said, stating the obvious. "Yeah, we had to change the locks again. Security issue." "Security issue?" "Mark, this is my house. You can't just change the locks and not give me a key." "Look, this is kind of a bad time," he said. "Jessica's getting the kids ready for bed and we're having some family time. Can we talk about this tomorrow?" I stared at him in complete disbelief. "Family time? In my house? That I can't get into?" "Sarah, don't make a scene. The neighbors will hear." That's when Jessica appeared behind him. "What's going on?" "Sarah's upset about the locks," Mark said, like I was being unreasonable. "Oh, right. I have your key right here," Jessica said, but she made no move to get it. "But actually, we need to talk first. Can you come back tomorrow? We've had a really long day." "Come back tomorrow? To my own house?" "Sarah, please don't be dramatic," Jessica sighed. "You can stay at Mom and Dad's tonight. They said it was fine." Something cold settled in my stomach. "They said it was fine? When did you talk to them?" Jessica and Mark exchanged a look. "They stopped by earlier," Jessica said carefully, "to check on us and see how we were settling in." "Settling in?" "Sarah, we need to have a serious conversation," Mark said. "But not tonight. Tomorrow, when everyone's calmer." "I am calm," I said, though my voice was rising. "I just want to get into my house." "Your house that you were going to kick your sister and her children out of?" Mark's voice turned hostile. "Your house that's too big for one person while your family suffers?" "Mark, what the hell is going on here?" "What's going on is that your parents helped us see the bigger picture," Jessica said. "This house is too much for you to handle alone. The mortgage, the maintenance, all of it. It makes more sense for all of us to be here together." "All of us?" "Mom and Dad explained everything," Jessica continued. "How worried they've been about you, living alone in this big house, struggling with the payments." "I'm not struggling with the payments." "Sarah, there's no shame in admitting you need help," Mark said condescendingly. "Your parents just want what's best for everyone." I felt like I was losing my mind. "What exactly did my parents tell you?" "That you've been having financial problems," Jessica said gently, like she was talking to a child. "That you're behind on the mortgage and were too proud to ask for help. They said that's probably why you've been so stressed and angry lately." The manipulation was so complete, so thorough, that for a moment I questioned my own reality. Had I been struggling financially? Was I behind on payments? No. My mortgage was auto-debited from my account every month, and I had 6 months of payments saved as a buffer. "Jessica, I am not behind on my mortgage. I am not struggling financially. I worked 2 jobs for 7 years specifically so I wouldn't struggle financially." Okay, she said in that placating tone people use with unstable relatives. "We can talk about all of this tomorrow, but right now the kids are trying to sleep, and this conversation is getting too heated." "Then give me my key so I can go to my bedroom in my house, and we can talk tomorrow." "Sarah, I really think it would be better if you stayed somewhere else tonight," Mark said firmly. "Give everyone some space to cool down." "Space? In my own house?" "Look, we're all living here now," Jessica said. "We need to establish some ground rules about respect and communication. We can't have you storming in here whenever you're upset, disturbing the kids." I stood there on my own front porch, locked out of my own house. being lectured about ground rules by people who had manipulated their way into my home. The rage that hit me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "Get out of my house, right now, tonight." "Sarah, be reasonable." "Get out!" I screamed, loud enough that lights started coming on in neighboring houses. "Get out of my house right now!" "Sarah, calm down," Jessica said, but I could see fear in her eyes now. "You're scaring the kids." "I don't care. This is my house. I worked 7 years for this house. You have no right to change my locks and keep me out." "We'll call the police," Mark threatened. "Good, call them. Tell them how you changed the locks on someone else's house and won't let the owner in." That shut him up pretty quickly. "Just go to Mom and Dad's," Jessica pleaded. "We'll sort this all out tomorrow when everyone's thinking clearly." But I was thinking clearly for the first time in weeks. I pulled out my phone and called my parents. "Mom, what the hell did you tell Jessica about my finances?" "Sarah, why are you calling so late? Is everything okay?" "No, everything is not okay. I'm locked out of my own house because Jessica changed the locks again, and she seems to think I'm financially struggling and need her help with my mortgage." There was a long pause. "Well, honey, we're just worried about you. That house is a big responsibility, and we thought—" "You thought what? That you could lie to Jessica about my financial situation to justify her taking over my house?" "We didn't lie." My dad's voice came on the line. "We just helped her understand that this arrangement could benefit everyone." "What arrangement? There was no arrangement. She was supposed to stay temporarily." "Sarah, calm down," my mom said. "You're getting hysterical." "I'm getting hysterical? I can't get into my own house." "Well, maybe this is a good opportunity for you to think about what's really important," my dad said. "Is it more important to have a big house all to yourself or to help your family?" "Are you seriously asking me that question right now?" "We raised you to care about family," my mom said. "But lately, it seems like you only care about yourself." I hung up on them and stood there shaking with rage and disbelief. My own parents had orchestrated this. They had lied to Jessica, manipulated the situation, and helped her take over my house. And they were acting like I was the problem for objecting to it. I ended up sleeping in my car that night, parked in my own driveway. It was one of the lowest points of my life. Successful homeowner reduced to sleeping in a Honda Civic outside the house she'd worked 7 years to buy. The next morning, I drove straight to a lawyer's office. I didn't have an appointment, but I sat in the waiting room until someone could see me. "This is a complicated situation," the lawyer, Mr. Thompson, said after I'd explained everything. "But the good news is the house is in your name. You've been making the payments, and you never signed any agreement giving them tenancy rights. So I can get them out?" "You can, but you'll need to follow proper eviction procedures. Give them written notice, follow state laws. It's going to take some time, but yes, you can legally remove them." "What about the locks?" "Changing the locks on someone else's property without permission is actually a crime. You could press charges if you wanted to." Walking out of that lawyer's office, I felt powerful for the first time in weeks. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I was a homeowner who had been the victim of manipulation and theft. I drove straight to a locksmith and had them meet me at my house. When Jessica answered the door, I was standing there with a uniformed locksmith and a legal document. "What's this?" she asked nervously. "This is your formal eviction notice," I said calmly. "You have 30 days to vacate my property, and this locksmith is here to change the locks back, since changing someone else's locks without permission is actually illegal." "Sarah, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. I've consulted with a lawyer. You're trespassing on my property, and I want you out." "What about the kids? What about family?" "You should have thought about the kids before you decided to steal my house." "We didn't steal anything. You changed my locks and refused to let me into my own home." "What would you call that?" Mark appeared behind her, looking angry. "Sarah, this is ridiculous. We're trying to help you." "I don't need your help. I need you out of my house." "We'll fight this," he said. "We'll get a lawyer, too." "Good luck with that," I replied. "My name is on the deed. My name is on the mortgage. I have bank records showing I've made every payment on time. What do you have?" They had nothing, and we all knew it. The locksmith finished his work and handed me 3 new keys. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. I was literally reclaiming control of my own space. "You have 30 days," I repeated. "Find somewhere else to go." I spent that night in my own bedroom for the first time in over a month. The house was chaos. Their belongings everywhere, kids' toys scattered around, my carefully organized space completely disrupted. But it was mine again, and I was going to take it back piece by piece. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Jessica and Mark made no effort to look for alternative housing. Instead, they dug in deeper, acting like they belonged there and I was the unwelcome guest. They would lock the bathroom door when they knew I needed to get ready for work. They would blast the TV late at night. Jessica would cook elaborate meals and not make enough for me, then act surprised when I pointed it out. "Oh, I'm sorry," she'd say. "I didn't realize you'd be eating dinner at home tonight." In my own house. My parents, meanwhile, launched a full-scale campaign to make me change my mind. They called constantly, sent other relatives to talk sense into me, and even showed up at my workplace to embarrass me in front of my colleagues. "Your poor sister is beside herself," my mom announced loudly in my office lobby. "She doesn't know where she's going to take those babies." "Mom, you can't just show up at my work," I said, mortified. "I'm trying to save this family from falling apart," she declared dramatically. "But you're too stubborn to see reason." My coworkers were staring. My boss looked concerned. It was humiliating. But the final straw came on day 28 of the 30-day notice period. I came home from work to find my parents' car in the driveway again. When I walked into the house, they were all sitting around my dining room table. My parents, Jessica, Mark, and the kids, having what looked like a family dinner. "Oh, good, Sarah's home," my dad said, like I was the one who was late to something. "We need to have a family meeting." A family meeting in my house that Jessica and Mark are supposed to be moving out of in 2 days? "Sit down, honey," my mom said. "We've all been talking, and we think we've come up with a solution that works for everyone." I remained standing. "I'm listening." "We think you should sell the house," my dad announced. The words hit me like a physical blow. "Excuse me?" "Sell the house," Jessica repeated. "Split the proceeds between all of us. That way, everyone gets a fresh start." "Split the proceeds? Of my house? That I bought with my money?" "Well, we've been contributing to the household expenses," Mark said, "and we've put work into maintaining the property." "You've been here for 5 weeks." "Sarah, this house is too much for you," my mom said gently. "You're obviously stressed. You're fighting with family. You're making decisions that hurt people you love. Maybe it's time to downsize and focus on what's really important. What's really important is that I worked 7 years to buy this house, and I'm not selling it to subsidize your poor financial planning." "Your poor financial planning," my dad said coldly. "You bought a house you can't afford." "I can afford it!" "In a neighborhood that's too expensive, and now you're taking it out on your family when we try to help." "Help? You call lying to Jessica about my finances helping?" "We never lied," my mom said. "We just helped her understand the bigger picture." "The bigger picture where I somehow owed Jessica half my house?" "The bigger picture where family takes care of family," my dad said. "But you've always been selfish, Sarah. Even as a child, you never wanted to share." That word again, selfish. It had been weaponized against me so many times that I was starting to believe it myself. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe wanting to keep the house I'd worked for was wrong. Maybe. And then something clicked. I looked around that table at my parents, who had orchestrated this whole situation. At Jessica and Mark, who had moved into my house and were now trying to force me to sell it. At my niece and nephew, who were being used as emotional ammunition against me. This wasn't about helping family. This was about control. This was about punishing me for being successful, for setting boundaries, for refusing to light myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "All of you. Get out of my house. Right now." "Sarah, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable," I exploded. I am being reasonable by wanting to live in the house I bought with money I earned through 7 years of sacrifice. I am being reasonable by not wanting to sell my home to people who manipulated and lied their way into it. You're having a breakdown, my mom said, standing up. You need help. The only help I need is for all of you to get the hell out of my life. Fine, my dad said, his voice ice cold. If that's how you want it, that is how I want it. Don't come crawling back to us when you realize what you've lost, Jessica said, tears streaming down her face. The only thing I've lost is my tolerance for manipulative family members. They left that night. All of them. Jessica and Mark packed up their belongings, finally, and moved out. My parents stormed off, making dramatic speeches about how I'd destroyed the family. But as I stood in my empty house, my house, I didn't feel destroyed. I felt free. The silence was beautiful. No one telling me I was selfish for wanting to use my own bathroom. No one rearranging my furniture without asking. No one changing my locks or making me feel guilty for wanting to enjoy what I'd worked for. I spent the weekend reclaiming my space. I rearranged the furniture back to how I liked it. I cleaned out the garage. I planted new flowers in the front yard. I made my house mine again. The family silent treatment lasted about 2 weeks before the first flying monkey showed up. My Aunt Carol sent to guilt me into reconciling. Your parents are heartbroken, she told me over coffee. They just don't understand what happened to you. What happened to me is that I learned to set boundaries. But they're your parents, and Jessica is your sister, and I'm a person who deserves to be treated with respect. No one's perfect, honey. Maybe they made some mistakes, but family is family. Family doesn't lie, manipulate, and steal, I said firmly. And family doesn't punish you for working hard and being successful. Carol left, looking confused and disappointed, but I felt strong, clear, certain. Over the following months, other family members tried to broker peace. My grandmother called crying. My cousins sent concerned texts, but I held firm. I wasn't interested in reconciling with people who thought I owed them my house, my money, or my tolerance for abuse just because we shared DNA. The holidays were hard. For the first time in my life, I spent Thanksgiving and Christmas alone. But I also spent them in peace, in my own space, without walking on eggshells or defending my right to exist. Jessica tried reaching out a few times, usually when she needed something, money for Emma's school supplies, help with a car repair. But I didn't respond. I'd learned that helping her always came with strings attached, guilt trips, and expectations that I'd solve all her problems forever. About 6 months after they moved out, I heard through the family grapevine that Jessica and Mark had separated. Apparently, without me to blame for their problems, they'd had to face the real issues in their relationship and finances. The marriage couldn't survive the accountability. My parents, meanwhile, had to deal with the social consequences of their actions. Other family members started asking questions about what had really happened. When the true story came out, that they'd helped Jessica take over my house and then tried to force me to sell it, public opinion shifted. I had no idea they'd changed her locks, my cousin Michelle told me when she called to apologize. I thought you were just being stubborn about letting Jessica stay temporarily. If someone did that to my house, I'd have called the police. One by one, family members reached out to apologize and express support. They'd been given a very different version of events, one where I was the selfish sister who wouldn't help her struggling family. Learning the truth shocked them, but the most surprising call came from my grandmother about 8 months after everything had happened. "Sarah, honey, I owe you an apology," she said, her voice shaky with emotion. "I said some terrible things to you, and I was wrong." "Grandma, it's okay." "No, it's not okay. I called you heartless, and you're not heartless. You're one of the strongest, most principled people I know. What your parents did was wrong, and what Jessica did was wrong, and I should have seen that from the beginning." Hearing those words from my grandmother, the family matriarch, the woman whose opinion had always mattered most, was incredibly healing. A year later, I was thriving. I'd gotten a promotion at work, partially because I was no longer distracted by family drama and could focus on my career. I'd started dating someone wonderful, a man named David who respected my boundaries and admired my independence. I'd also started volunteering with a support group for people dealing with family estrangement. It turns out there are a lot of us, people who had to choose their peace over their family's dysfunction. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, I would tell the group members who were struggling with guilt. It's self-preservation. You can't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. My house became a sanctuary again. I hosted dinner parties for my chosen family, friends who celebrated my successes instead of trying to take advantage of them. I had guest rooms for people who respected my space and my rules. I even started a small business doing financial consulting, helping people plan and save for major purchases like homes. My story of sacrifice and success resonated with clients who were struggling to balance their own dreams with family pressure. About 18 months after cutting contact, Jessica reached out again. But this time was different. "Sarah, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she wrote in a long email. "But I've been going to therapy and I'm starting to understand how wrong I was. I took advantage of your kindness, your success, and your love for family. I let Mom and Dad manipulate the situation, and I manipulated it myself. I stole your home and tried to make you feel guilty for wanting it back. I'm deeply, truly sorry." The email was longer, detailing her recognition of the manipulation tactics, her understanding of how hard I'd worked for my house, and her acknowledgement that family doesn't entitle you to other people's property or success. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she concluded, "and I don't expect you to want a relationship with me, but I wanted you to know that I understand now, and I'm ashamed of what I did." I sat with that email for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, to rebuild the bridge, but I'd learned to be cautious, to protect my peace. After a few weeks, I wrote back, a short email acknowledging her apology and expressing hope that she was getting the help she needed. I didn't offer reconciliation, but I didn't slam the door either. My parents, on the other hand, never apologized. They occasionally sent birthday cards with passive-aggressive messages about hoping I'd learned what's truly important and family being forever. I threw them away without reading past the first line. 2 years after the eviction, I ran into my dad at the grocery store. He looked older, smaller somehow. "Sarah," he said, surprised. "Dad?" "You look good," he said awkwardly. "Healthy." "I am healthy." "Your mother and I? We miss you." "Do you?" "Of course we do. You're our daughter." "I'm your daughter who you tried to manipulate into giving up her house." His face hardened. "We were trying to help the family. You were trying to control me. Everything we did was out of love. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't manipulate. Love doesn't punish success." He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. "You've changed." "Yes, I have. I've learned that I deserve to be treated with respect, even by family, especially by family." He walked away without another word, and I felt nothing. No sadness, no anger, no guilt, just peace. That evening, I sat in my living room, my beautiful, peaceful living room, and reflected on the journey. 2 years ago, I'd been consumed by family drama, questioning my own sanity, sleeping in my car outside my own house. Now, I was genuinely happy. I had a successful career, a loving relationship, meaningful friendships, and a home that was truly mine. I'd learned that you can love people and still refuse to let them destroy your life. I'd learned that family isn't an excuse for abuse, manipulation, or theft. Most importantly, I'd learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's what allows you to show up as your best self for the people who truly deserve your energy and love. My house still had 3 bedrooms, but now they were filled with joy instead of resentment, with chosen family instead of entitled relatives, with peace instead of chaos. I'd worked 7 years to buy this house, but it had taken 2 more years to truly make it home, and it was worth every struggle, every boundary, every difficult conversation. Because in the end, the most important thing I learned wasn't about real estate or family dynamics. It was about self-worth. I learned that I was worth protecting, worth defending, worth choosing. And that realization set me free in ways that no house, no matter how beautiful, ever could. Standing in my kitchen that night, looking out at my backyard, where I'd planted a garden full of vegetables and flowers, I smiled. This was what success looked like, not just the house, but the peace to enjoy it. Not just the achievement, but the wisdom to protect it. I'd lost a family that never really valued me anyway, but I'd gained something infinitely more precious. Myself. And for the first time in my life, that felt like more than enough. It felt like everything.